So it is considered also, that a very important, very dynamic topic. Time to time you can find lots of articles written on two things. One is collegium system, another is activism. This. And in 2022, first question was related to this judicial activism. Judicial activism, right, then linking to this environment and link to case law. This. So in 2022, first question was related to judiciary. 2023 also first question is related to judiciary. This. And it was a very specific question related to judicial activism, case law in the field of environment. This environment related case. Yes. So that way we can see this. Anyhow, so if you see the questions, the way questions are being asked nowadays, so they demand a bit in-depth understanding. Anyhow, judicial activism, when we talk, so there are some questions we generally write, general questions related to judicial activism. Then we'll take like So these are all negative questions. You know that. So they are on the negative side of judicial activism. So since by judicial activism, judiciary has empowered itself and it has become more proactive. So that is how it is said that it is judicialization of Indian democracy. You should know that the judiciary is the most active organ of the state. This ऐसा लगता है कि the first two organs are hardly present. Right? If you see the newspaper, you will find the presence of judiciary more than legislature and executive. This you can say. Then it is called that replacing. The judicial activism has replaced constitutional governance by judicial governance. This is breach of separation of power. This activism is started. So it is in a way, it seems that judicial activism has resulted into whether it is trying to make law, execute law, not limiting itself to only interpret law, the law role that was given to. And then let's say it has increased its own power. Hence, since it has increased its own power, so power increase is a threat to constitutionalism. So it itself has become threat. So these are some negative aspects you can consider. But there are positive aspects, you know that. The positive aspects we can consider. The judicial positive questions can be. Judicial activism has saved Indian democracy. And strengthen faith of people in democracy. Let's discuss then plus other things can be. So positives will talk while having discussion. Already, let's say positives are very. You can say that obvious. We have written also social justice, fundamental rights, constitutionalism, protection of environment, all those things. So positives are obvious, no need to write questions. Early questions we write in negative sense. Before we'll go, let's say that, just to give you an idea that legislature and executive, they were supposed to be more active and judiciary was supposed to be less active. But it seems that it has happened just opposite. Legislature and executive, judiciary has become like this. Judiciary has become most active. So this is how we can represent before we start with this. Then when we talk about activism, judicial activism, so it is defined, let's say when we define it, so it is activism is nothing but, let's say that, active role, assertive role, proactive role, enthusiastic role. Right. In dispensing justice. People and promoting constitutional governance. So when judiciary starts playing active role, proactive role, assertive role, enthusiastic role in dispensing justice to people and promoting constitutional governance. So this is what we say it as activism. We say it as judicial activism. Yes. Like any matter is, let's say, so any matter is there, so they can hear, let's say, after 10 days also, but many a time they just hear right now. This they say that. Plus, they can be passive, let's say, passive in giving judgment, but they become more proactive, they go on innovating it, interpreting. So basically it will result into, let's say, when they are, let's say, playing this active role. So what they will do by active? The active means they will try to protect rights of people, protect rights of people, or let's say that they will try to give innovative interpretation. Innovative interpretation they will try to give. Right. Or they will try to, let's say, promote social justice. Social justice. This is how it is. So they can be proactive in terms of protecting rights. The rights of people, let's say. So many a time, let's say that any person, suppose has been arrested, detained, so they can show their concern, they can hear the matter, urgent basis, they can pass a judgment. That can be considered. Or let's say that innovative interpretation, you know that various innovations they have given. So various innovative interpretations they have given. This you can understand. Or promote, let's say, social justice for people, those who are suffering, etc. you can consider. Now, let's say that the role of judiciary, if you talk, the role of judiciary. So, role is basically its neutral role. You say the judiciary has a largely neutral role. Right. Like say the state has legislature to make law. Executive to execute law. And judiciary to adjudicate. So it has to adjudicate. So adjudication role is very limited, let's say that. Adjudication will be needed only when that you have a problem at the first two level. And they are, let's say that elected, so they are the elected functionaries. They are elected functionaries. So they are, let's say that elected by people, and it is non-elected functionary. Its role is limited. Yes, it means they have to play a big role. Yes. The first two organs are expected to play a big role, and the last organ, the third organ, is expected to play the least role. Like you can see that in the field, it is the players who are going to, let's say, play active role. The role of umpire is just adjudication type. It is not that umpire also start playing, isn't it? The role of umpire is just to pass the judgment, adjudicate, watch it and just pass. That is how, let's say, judiciary role we can consider. But then let's say why the question comes, why it started, which we'll talk a bit later. Why they have started becoming this active, proactive, enthusiastic, why they need to be like this. And let's when they have started, so when they start becoming active, So yes, they can dispense justice, but then you know that the line which is demarcating the separation of power. So when judiciary is through adjudication, it tries to interpret law and give justice, so it is within its domain. But when judiciary by interpretation, adjudication, it starts interpreting law, and by that it is substituting law and then executing also that law, then it starts playing the role of the two organs, which we'll talk that a bit later how it is, why it started playing like this. Then the question comes that when it started, let's say evolution, when judicial activism started. So judicial activism, or why judiciary started becoming assertive, and when it started becoming assertive, it has its, let's say, origin. If you talk origin, let's say it goes to basically it is considered UK 1610. Right? There was, let's say, King Stuart time. This is how the judiciary has power of, means before US activism was experienced in UK in quite past history. You know that this judicial review. This, but its origin is traced back to basically US, and that is also 1800. Justice Marshall. Justice Marshall. Case is Marbury versus Madison. You know what US Supreme Court did? For the first time, US Supreme Court struck a law made by US Congress. For the first time. And that is called activism. Striking a law in a country where there is separation of power. Complete separation of power. Yes. Hence, by striking a law, judiciary played its assertive role. It became very assertive, means it asserted its power. That if law is arbitrary, so it will strike. This. And from there, let's say that the beginning of judicial activism in the US is a role model in terms of, because US judiciary is most powerful judiciary in the world. Let's take in India, if you take India, it is taken, right, 1975, Raj Narayan case. Raj Narayan case. And in Raj Narayan case, Indira Gandhi candidature was cancelled. You know that. So it shows its assertiveness. So Indira Gandhi candidature was cancelled, and that is how assertiveness by judiciary. That not a passive rather than assertive. It is not Keshavananda Bharati case, rather it is Raj Narayan case, which is taken because it is related to executive. Somehow Keshavananda Bharati case is related to innovation. That is also an act of activism. But striking means, let's say, Prime Minister candidate is cancelled by the court. Right? It's very, let's say, big thing. So that judge was asked when he was alive, while passing that judgment, Did you have concern about consequence of your judgment? In interview, he was asked. You know what he replied? Judges do not think about consequence, otherwise they will not pass judgment. Yes. So that is how you should know that. So judiciary is like this, and that is how assertiveness starts. Then in our country, evolution starts like this. So so judiciary first phase, it was not, let's say that, clear about its role, whether it should play active role, it should play submissive role, what should be the role. Since Indian democracy was evolving, so it was not very clear. That's why you know that first phase, the cases were challenged, even First Amendment was challenged. And you know that it was not, let's say, even judicial review, Schedule 9, it justified that Schedule 9 will not be under judicial review. This, but 1970s, especially 73, you can say, 75, you can say that. That is how it started becoming assertive, and you know that already we have dealt in fundamental rights, president's rule, ordinance. Most of the cases will fall in this category. This, so here we will find that although we don't want to write at this stage, but most cases, you know that most cases will fall here. Right? Cases related to be it fundamental rights, right? Be it related to ordinance, or be it related to president's rule, others, environment also. So all those cases, let's say even environment related cases. So they will all fall in this category, that they gave several such judgments, which separately we'll talk when we'll take social justice, environment, etc., etc. Right? Now, this phase can be considered either you give any name, a strengthening name you can say, broadening name you can say. So they started broadening activism. Right? Activism went in many different areas. This. So that we can consider. But then another phase came with overreaches. The judicial activism, overreaches, tyrannies, all these things happen. The criticism, it also started facing like this. So that way we can say a bit short journey of evolution. Right. Then we'll take advantage, what is advantage, disadvantage, blah, blah things. So let's write few lines on this. Judicial activism. Judicial activism has become an important development in Indian democracy for promoting constitutional governance. It has saved the Indian Constitution. And has strengthened people's faith. In Constitution. It has become basis for several landmark judgments. Several landmark judgments, bringing Constitution close to people. By upholding rule of law. However, it has also resulted into overreaches. Judicial activism is defined as an assertive and proactive role by judiciary. In dispensing of justice and promotion of constitutional governance. Next, its origin and evolution are mentioned above. The evolution shows that judicial activism became a new norm. Since 1970s. And it has gone to strengthening, broadening and a stage where judiciary is also criticized for judicial interpretation, which becomes a sort of judicial substitution of law. Change paragraph. It has become so important that there are several landmark judgments which can be categorized as follows. Next, constitutionalism, and constitutional governance. There are several developments within that. There are several developments which threaten constitution. There are several developments which threaten constitution due to arbitrary action by the first two organs. Like Keswananda Bharti case, and Minerva Mill case. Minerva Mills. Protected constitution from getting diluted by amendments like 24, 25 and 42nd Amendment. Next, S R Bommai case. Related to President's rule. DC Wadhwa case. Related to ordinance. This. Putta Swami case. Related to Aadhaar. Threatening constitutional governance. Next, fundamental rights, protection of fundamental rights. Same Keswanand Bharti. Menka Gandhi. due process. We are writing because nowadays हर साल अब एक केस ला वो पूछने लगे हैं. This year also they have asked gender wala case question in case law. They have started asking case law, let's say this. So sectorally, otherwise not needed to club in this way. But you should have to, when they ask 2022 question that year let's say people should have linked to this. This is how 2022. Those who do not know, they may not have fundamental facts, so they will not write about MC Mehta case. It was the first such case, right, related to pollution. This. Then Delhi CNG case transfer, no? CNG was introduced at the order of Supreme Court. Then firecrackers regulation, Diwali occasional sector, you know that it has. Graded action plan in case of stubble burning, you know that. The action is coming from judiciary, not from governments. Then these are other cases. Lavasa city, it has stuck. Lavasa city development is right stayed, you know that, because it will create environment ecology problems. Aravali area constructions are also regulated by, let's say that, by judiciary, because Aravali area constructions have destroyed ecosystem around Aravali. So that has happened. And Niyamgiri Hill is related to POSCO and Vedant case, right, in Odisha. The investment was cancelled, you know that. This. Or whether be sectors, this. So that can be linked to environment aspect. Already you know we don't have to explain this, isn't it? This you know that, this you know that. So you know already we don't have to explain this, how constitutionalism and etc. will find this. The next comes is social justice. Social justice, women empowerment. And this, we will deal PIL separately for this. The PIL is the most potent tool of judicial activism. This PIL will deal separately, so you'll understand this. Then you should know that women empowerment reforms, let's say, socio-economic development and reforms. Basically, it also means socio-economic development and reform. This, you can say that Talak is, Sabri Malak is. Yes. Yes, yes. अभी तो वो सही नहीं है, डर गए. Sorry to say. Judges डर गए गवर्नमेंट से. जो गे वाला जजमेंट है तो रिवर्सल है, गोइंग स्टेप बैक. तो आपने राइट दे दिया उसको, साथ में रह सकते हो बट शादी नहीं कर सकते हो. Sorry to say that. No, basically, let's say gay, they can live together. That right they have. They cannot. Right. Right. So, what does it mean when they can live together? Anyhow, the judgment is judgment. It should be respected. See, Niyamgiri Hill is related to POSCO investment. POSCO was a company of Korean company, South Korean company, which invested in iron ore, which is related to Niyamgiri Hill of Odisha. That resulted into the tribals of that Niyamgiri Hill, etc. They got affected by this decision. There were also land acquisitions for investment of POSCO in that area, including Vedant, let's say that company, which also invested. These all resulted into protest by the tribal people in that area. Protest resulted into controversies. Odisha government constituted a committee, inquiry, all these things happened. Finally, matter reaches to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court, because of this Project will have its adverse impact on ecology, environment, as well as the tribal people, etc. Ultimately, it cancelled the POSCO investment in Nyamgiri Hill. Yes. So that is what the case related. Already we have told this is how the benefits. Already in fundamental rights, enough number of cases we have told to deal with. So this we can say that plus PIL when we'll talk, we'll deal plus Vishakha guideline still will talk very Vishakha judgment. Yes. So lots of schemes, programs, let's say that. We can mention, let's say, midday meal. The midday meal was also introduced, you know that, by, let's say, court order. Midday meal was spread throughout the country at court order, Supreme Court order. This. So this we can say that. Under Manrega, let's say, in drought affected areas, court say that you provide 200 days job. Yes. The court order resulted into this kind of, let's say that. Courts have given compensation, ex gratia help. Ex gratia help. Court had order in jails, let's say that. Jails, protection of their natural, let's say that, natural rights, and separate, let's say that, prisons for men and women. This. So there can be very different types of judgments, etc., etc. You'll find this. So enough you can have on social justice, empowerment, gender, all these things which Supreme Court has given judgment. This. So that we can consider. Plus, next is, can you say that? Next we consider is related to administrative reforms. Reforms which is related to good governance. Good governance, accountability, transparency. This, right, it is. So, you know that this Raj Narayan case itself. So, Raj Narayan case itself, it says that people should know. So, know about government decisions. Not secrecy should be maintained. Basically, it was also saying transparency. It is linked to transparency. You should know that Vinod Narayan judgment, (1997), right, about CVC, CBI, is a related judgment. It was made a statutory body. This Prakash Singh, Prakash Singh, 1996, police reform. Police reform, same thing also in 2006, same related to this. And same, let's say that, 2023, Code of Investigation. Abhi just fresh arrival hai market. Sorry to say this. It has talked about Code of investigation. This abhi this 2-3 दिन पहले we told you articles written on this. Then that case, right? 2022 Election Commission, Selection Committee. This Lily Thomas case. Lily Thomas case, decriminalization. Wait, 2013. This. So, Supreme Court, let's say that case, this TSR Subramaniam case, this TSR Subramaniam's case. For Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission for appointment, posting, transfer. 2011. Okay. Okay. So there can be, let's say, you should have some number of cases where you can refer it, how it has promoted good governance. Plus Aadhaar Puttaswamy case also can be counted here. But Puttaswamy case is also related to protection of right to privacy, and Aadhaar arbitrary provisions of Aadhaar were struck. This, so that case can also be mentioned. So enough number of cases you can have, plus by the time you appear in mains examination, already you get several such types of things, be it related to Lokpal. When all other topics are also taught, then you will also get some other cases, right? You yourself can club, let's say that, several such cases which can be considered as basis for reforms, good governance, transparency, accountability it has promoted. Or let's say that social justice and etc. it can be considered, right? We can see that how judicial activism, let's say, is in almost all fields. We cannot cover each and every field here. Even human rights, you can say, there can be also protection of human right. You should know that Supreme Court has also laid down guidelines for encounters when encounter was introduced, right? The guidelines for encounter, guidelines to be followed when you have to demolish someone's house, that you can consider. So protection of human rights, civil liberty, that also we can include. So there can be several areas depending that judicial activism. So this is what we can find. So let's write on this further. That judicial activism can be found. Judicial activism can be found in almost all the affairs of the state. Affairs of the state, from policy making to policy implementation. From policy making to policy implementation. And from protection of fundamental rights. And from protection of fundamental rights to social justice. Social justice. With advantages. 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 Let's first. It protects constitutional governance and promotes constitutionalism. Next, The first two organs are made more proactive and citizen-centric. Next, it brings innovations. In governance and development. It promotes accountability of government. Next, it has resulted into lots of administrative reforms. Socioeconomic reforms, and has promoted good governance. Okay. It has kept democracy dynamic. Vibrant, and has strengthened people's faith. In democracy. Next, it has imbibed a sense of justice in people. It has imbibed a sense of justice in people. It has protected rule of law. Its disadvantages. First, it results into shifting of powers from the first two organs to judiciary, which goes against a scheme of separation of powers. Next, the role of judiciary is interpretation. But through interpretation, it has substituted laws. Next, going beyond its boundaries. That is, instances of judicial overreach. Crossing Lakshman Rekha. crossing Lakshman Rekha, the inviolable line. The inviolable line. Next. It itself threatens rule of law and constitutionalism. It itself threatens rule of law and constitutionalism by usurping powers Next, it has expanded the scope of judicial review. Which makes judiciary very powerful. Very powerful. It has promoted policy paralysis. That is, too much of activism is bad for policy paralysis. That too much of activism is bad for. Too much of activism is bad for policy making and policy implementation. It lacks its own accountability. In bracket, its own house is not in order. Not in order. Okay. Its own house is not in order. Same paragraph. Okay. Judicial activism has faced criticisms. Even by judges. For over-enthusiasm and reactionary role played by judiciary. That's judicial overreach. See, benefits are very obvious, so we have not given lots of focus on that. Already we have given lots of cases related to constitutionalism, social justice, and protection of fundamental rights, protection of environment. All those things we have already talked. They are also part of advantages. That is how positive things can be written. But disadvantages gradually we'll talk also through judicial overreach. Disadvantages are that there are so many disadvantages which we'll also understand when we'll take PIL, the negative side of PIL. So that will also give you to some extent some understanding related to what we have in terms of negative aspects. So judicial overreach will also tell. But these are the points when we say that we have told that separation of power. So when one, let's say, organ becomes active and other two organs are not active, so it will raise lots of questions. Let's say that. Let's related to breaching this, grabbing more powers. It has, by judicial activism, it has happened that its eventualities, consequences that it has become more powerful. Today, the first two organs are very cautious in the sense that when you pass any law, when you pass any, let's say that make any policy, it will just automatically land in court and court will intervene it. That results into delay. So delay is considered policy paralysis, because when there is delay in decision, you can see that delay in decision, we can find how we are trying to bring this law related to restructuring of tribunal bill. So when we have a restructuring of tribunal bill related, that started with 2017, government brought again in 2021, but now it is pending, so the tribunals will not be restructured. Hence there will be delay in decision. Same thing related to Aadhaar. Supreme Court took, let's say that Aadhaar, the cases started related to Aadhaar in 2012. Finally, the judgments were given in 2017. So delay in, let's say that cases when Supreme Court hears, so ultimately it affects the decision of the government. That results into policy paralysis. This we say that happens. Plus it itself has become so powerful, it threatens the constitutionalism, we can consider it. Let's say that it lacks legal sense basically, but it has started making policy, executing policy, which we'll talk when we'll take this let's say that overreach cases. So then you should also know the difference between activism and overreach. And we expect a question one day related to overreach also. So far they have not asked, I guess, in GS paper, question related to judicial overreach. So what is activism? What is overreach? So overreach is, what is activism? So basically you will find that when judiciary crosses its own line, that is how you can say inviolable line, and it is over enthusiastic, means when judiciary by adjudication, interpretation of law, starts substituting law or making law and implementing law. Means when judiciary by its activism starts playing the role of either legislature or executive, so it becomes judicial overreach. Yes. J.S. Burma once tried to give clarity related to judicial overreach, judicial activism. He justified judicial activism, but he did not justify judicial overreach. Now, judicial activism results when, let's say that, when we can say this, the judicial activism has the legal basis, this is how we say. So when judicial activism has a legal basis, so it is justified. You say it is justified. What is the legal basis of judicial activism? The legal basis is, let's say that any FIR has not been filed. Suppose someone is suffering for some months, FIR has not been filed. In that case, judiciary can tell that you file FIR. Because it has a legal basis. If there is a crime commission, so FIR should be filed. This, it can say. Now, there is any, let's say, act of murder or any corruption case. Any corruption case, any act of murder case, and government is not investigating. It can ask the government to carry out investigation. It can intervene there. This. So similarly, let's say compensation has not been paid. Compensation has not been paid and government has promised compensation. So it can act proactively. Or any, let's say, arbitrariness, any law has been brought. Let's say amendment has been brought. Government has introduced 25th amendment, 42nd amendment. Or let's say that reservation we told, 103rd amendment, EWS reservation. So 103rd amendment, तो इसका legal basis है. It has to take into consideration. So while hearing all those cases where there is a legal basis in the sense that we have certain legal provisions, rules, policies, and then government is not acting, or there is any arbitrary action by the government. So while hearing this, the court can pass a judgment assertively. When it passes assertively, let's say Menka Gandhi case, or let's say President's rule, SR Bommai case, any case you can consider. So J.S. Verma says that when activism means judiciary is proactive, enthusiastic in passing a judgment where there is a legal basis, that activism is justified. But when judiciary is passing a judgment where it does not have a legal basis, and that legal basis means it cannot substitute a law by its own judgment, or it cannot itself start executing any such law by overseeing that law, that will be overreach. This is how we define it. Let's write this. Then we'll explain it. Then I will explain by example. Judicial overreach. Judicial overreach means when judiciary acts in such a fashion. Judiciary acts in such a fashion that it enters in the domain of the first two organs, and it does not have legal basis. It is called judicial overreach. In general, it is referred as overactivism. First, overactivism, next, overenthusiasm. Overenthusiasm. Next, crossing Lakshman Rekha. Manmohan Singh once remarked in 2006 that judiciary was going too far. मतलब कुछ ज़्यादा ही आगे बढ़ गए. Judiciary was going too far. Yes. So, how we distinguish it? Let's write difference between judicial activism and judicial overreach. Difference between judicial activism and judicial overreach. J.S. Verma once distinguished judicial activism from judicial overreach. By giving remark when there is legal basis and judiciary acts in proactive manner, it is activism and is justified. But when judiciary acts without legal basis, it is overreach. And it is not justified. Not justified. The difference can be understood by following examples. The difference can be understood by following examples. Following examples. Right. Following examples. First, Vishakha guideline case. Means Vishakha case, let's say. 2006 police reform. Case. This liquor ban case. Next, BCCI case. So, if you take, let's say, Vishakha guideline, it went on laying down guideline for any workplace harassment, which remained in effect till 2013 when the Post Act was brought. In a way, it ended up making a policy. Right. By Vishakha guideline, what it did? So, by Vishakha guideline, by police reform, by liquor ban, and right, by this, basically these are all examples of making law. Making law or policy. This. And by this, let's say you are playing the role of executive. This is the role of executive, and this is the role of legislature. Means it becomes government of India. Okay. it becomes Government of India. Let's take interesting thing. तो BCCI का एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर इन्होंने अपॉइंट किया. जब BCCI में करप्शन चल रहा था, RM Lodha panel was constituted. Then it appointed the BCCI administrator. Can you imagine? BCCI का हेड सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अपॉइंट किया. This and they were running BCCI. One was Vinod Rai. This. और अगर वो करप्ट हो गए फिर दोनों में जो दो लोग अपॉइंट किए गए थे, दोनों में डिफरेंस पैदा हो गया था. दे हैड डिफरेंसेस, राइट. एनीहाउ, तो यू आर अपॉइंटिंग लेट्स की चेयरपर्सन और एनी लेट्स से हेड ऑफ एनी स्पोर्ट अथॉरिटी, which is the role of the executive if at all it can do, not your this. Then आप बोल रहे हो कि constitute करो civil service commission for posting transfer and it is binding within 3 months you constitute. आज तक नहीं हुआ. In 2011 it gave a judgment कि you constitute within 3 months और वो आज तक हुआ नहीं. Right. उस साल तो याद नहीं है, बट उन्होंने बोला कि फ्री डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ फूड ग्रेन. जजेस को ये लगा कि गोडाउन में पड़ा हुआ है राइट फूड ग्रेन और लोग इधर उनको मिल नहीं रहा है के खाने को, तो बेहतर है वहां क्यों रखे हो, सब डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर दो. राइट. बट लेट्स से कि गरीब कौन है पता ही नहीं है हमारे देश में. Isn't it? किसको दोगे भाई? तो अब जैसे ही देना शुरू करोगे, तो पहले का कहानी है, अब तो थोड़ा डेटा इंप्रूव हो गया है. पहले का स्टोरी है, तो जैसे ही फूड ग्रेन बांटना शुरू करोगे, जो रिच है वो लेके चले जाएंगे, जो पुअर है वो पुअर ही रह जाएगा. And it will increase food inflation. No. Right. तो गवर्नमेंट को लगा कि कोर्ट जो है एडवाइस दे रहा है. इस पे अटॉर्नी जनरल ने सोचा होगा, ऐसे कोर्ट में बातचीत होता है, तो कोर्ट ने बोला अटॉर्नी जनरल दे शुड बी फ्री डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ फूड ग्रेन. तो गवर्नमेंट को डाउट हो गया कि वेदर इट वाज एडवाइस और इट वाज ऑर्डर. हेंस अटॉर्नी जनरल अगेन वेंट टू कोर्ट टू आस्क was it order or it was advice? They say it is order. Right. So बहुत सारे ऐसे judgment है that you can find it. Right. So this is what you'll find that. Let's take interesting case, liquor ban case. Right. ये तो पकड़े गए, मतलब एक होता है ना कि बहुत सारे जजमेंट तो थोड़ा सब्जेक्टिव होता है. लिकर बैन केस, उन्होंने बोला कि हाईवे के इन एंड अराउंड सर्टेन डिस्टेंस लिकर विल नॉट बी सोल्ड. हाउ कैन यू पास ऑर्डर ओवरनाइट? भाई जिसका शॉप है, जो लोग वहां पे जॉब करते हैं, उनका क्या होगा? राइट. व्हाई इट शुड नॉट बी लिकर, व्हाई देयर शुड बी लिकर बैन? द लिकर बैन रिजल्ट इनटू ड्रंकन ड्राइविंग, ड्रंकन ड्राइविंग रिजल्ट्स इनटू एक्सीडेंट्स. देन न्यूज़पेपर वालों ने, मीडिया वालों ने इस रिसर्च किया होगा अपना कि हाउ मच मींस इन एक्सीडेंट्स, व्हाट इज द कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ ड्रंकन ड्राइविंग. सो ड्रंकन ड्राइविंग कंट्रीब्यूट्स 6 to 10% इन ऑल एक्सीडेंट्स. सो 6 to 10% के लिए हाँ, वो तो गवर्नमेंट ने वो उसका नंबर ही चेंज कर दिया, वो तो हाईवे का नंबर ही चेंज कर दिया. ठीक है. बट गवर्नमेंट ब्रॉट चेंज इन द रूल. तो रूल जब चेंज हो गया तो जजमेंट ही नलिफाई हो गया. Yes, that you can consider. So it is a baseless judgment. Why you are going into this? Let the executive decide. Right. Liquor ban, you do the liquor ban, so that you can consider. This, so that will fine. Police reform, it gave in 2006 7-point binding directives. आज तक implement नहीं हुआ. अभी तो article आया था, you may have read, police reform and code of investigation. 17 states have implemented separation of investigation and law and order investigation. So अच्छा article था, you should know this. So that is how you will find this. It has not been implemented. Then बहुत सारे और भी cases हैं. How many cases we can tell? There are several cases where judiciary has been criticized that it is going beyond its. Even the fourth judge case also can be considered. So when it is striking the fourth judge case, the legislature, 99th Amendment, this 99th Amendment is also the legislature is competent to bring amendment to create National Judicial Appointment Commission, but that is also, it is striking. It also comes under overreach case, let's say that, this. So, and let's say that judiciary is, when PIL will take, so there will tell the judiciary has more legal expertise. It lacks policy and administrative expertise. Judiciary does not know about administration, administrative challenges, and it does not have policy expertise. It should not enter in that domain. Right. Plus, it is not elected institution. So, the first two organs have that level of responsibility. This is how it is said. So, let's write further on this. Right. The above cases show that the judiciary has acted as first legislature, second as executive. And hence, it is breach of separation of powers. It is breach of separation of powers, and it is breach of separation of powers and separation of powers, and it lacks not only policy expertise, but also policy implementation experience. At best, it has legal expertise. Hence, it should not enter in the first two organs domain. Hence, it is said that judicial overreach should be avoided. For instance, in liquor ban case, only 6 to 10% accidents are caused by drunken driving. Hence, there was lack of empirical basis for this judgment. Similarly, in fourth judge case, when the law was completely struck, it was criticized. When law was completely struck, it was criticized that legislature was competent to make law. legislature was competent to make law. Legislature was competent to make law. And it should not have completely struck the amendment. It should not have completely struck the amendment. Completely struck the amendment. Amendment. This. Let's write. Then the most important thing is need for judicial activism. Need for judicial activism. Is it clear so far? Are you able to understand? Need for judicial activism. Next. First. When there are first two organs that are elected by people to fulfill their aspirations, why there is need for judicial activism. Next, whether judicial activism has been imposed on judiciary. Whether judicial activism has been imposed on judiciary by legislature and executive. This judicial activism is a result of following factors. First, the first two organs have been highly passive and reactive rather than proactive. Next, they have left people to find justice themselves. They have left people to find justice themselves. Next, they have threatened constitutional governance. Not once, twice, but almost it has become a norm. Next, they promote rule by law rather than rule of law. This is part of first point, let's say. First point, make it. Now, all these points are part of first point. First point related to lack of proactive role by legislature and executive. Right. Next, second point. The Constitution itself has given active role to judiciary. judiciary as guardian of the constitution and protector of fundamental rights, guardian of the constitution and protector of the fundamental rights, in bracket also connect, also article 142, also article 142, to do complete justice, to do complete justice. Next, liberal constitution and traditional society, liberal constitution and traditional society, in bracket, democracy was top dressing in India. Democracy was top dressing in India by Ambedkar. Hence, judiciary cannot remain passive. Hence, judiciary cannot remain passive in bringing socio-economic changes. Bringing socio-economic changes. Emergence of new issues. Emergence of new issues related to human rights, sustainable development, etc. So basically, let's say tomorrow I will tell you what exactly it is. You should know that the challenge क्या है, वो challenge ये है कि the first two organs are, वो इस तरीके से inactive है कि अगर activism नहीं होगा तो society will not be served. Their inactivism is so serious and so, let's say that कि what we can say that कि many times it is thick-skinned people, it hardly matters to them. The behavior you can consider, and they have left people to themselves. You can see what happens in Manipur. The court comes forward. Whether court is supposed to come forward, government is silent. This is not first time it has happened, or first occasion, let's say that. It starts with, let's say, when Sikh riot happens, no investigation. Right. Before that, let's say कि riot happened related to other religion, let's say, but Sikh riot happened first time and no investigation is done. So this is what we'll find this. Same thing we'll find that कि Delhi, let's say that कि pollution problem, and people are left to themselves. Governments are not acting. वो मीटिंग बुलाता है तो ये नहीं जाता है, ये मीटिंग बुलाता है तो वो नहीं जाता है, and बिना दोनों के मीटिंग का कुछ होगा नहीं. और यूपी को बुलाया गया तो what यूपी ने क्या जवाब दिया? यूपी गवर्नमेंट replied, pollution is coming from Pakistan. Right. Pollution coming from Pakistan. Right. वो geographical region दे रहा है उसका. Right, climatical region. Right. So this is what you'll find. Right. Same thing with firecrackers, that, right. So people have been left to themselves. Let's say a situation has gone to such a level, right? It's so glaring, that I often give example, right? So Rajasthan High Court example I give generally, right? So one child went missing in Rajasthan, a poor family, and somehow they approached civil society, and civil society filed a case in High Court, the Rajasthan High Court. So Rajasthan High Court, police was demanding bribe from the family. Means family has, let's say that a child is missing in the family. Family is a poor family, and police is demanding bribe. Yes. So Rajasthan High Court summoned the DGP of the Rajasthan and said that within 24 hours child should be present. And within 24 hours child was present. Yes. So पुलिस को पता है कि चाइल्ड कहाँ है. जब थ्रेट किया हाई कोर्ट ने कि वी विल हैव ए क्रिमिनल केस अगेंस्ट यू. सो आप बहुत सारे ऐसे केसेस है. आजकल तो वीडियो बनने लगा है जजेस का, जो जजमेंट्स होता है उसको देखोगे तो आपको सोचना शुरू कर दोगे कि अगर ये जज नहीं होते तो फिर क्या होता. तो फिर क्या होता जस्टिस का. इसलिए कि एग्जीक्यूटिव लेजिस्लेचर दे आर ऑलमोस्ट लेट्स से कि लेजिस्लेचर इज वर्किंग फॉर 60 days, 60-70 days. दिस इज हाउ आई से सार्कास्टिकली. बच्चों का भी अटेंडेंस 75 होता है और उससे कम होता है तो उसका मार्क्स काट लेते हैं. दिस और जो हेडमास्टर है, मतलब देश को चलाने वाला है, उसका कोई अटेंडेंस नहीं है. This right. So this is what we'll find this the challenge. Let's say this. So you cannot say that these are not the problems. It is not one problem, two problems after problems. Right. बहुत सारे लोगों को ऐसे ही कस्टडी में डाल दिया जाता है और वो 10 साल के बाद फ्री हो जाता है, इसलिए कि उसने किस किया ही नहीं. This already we have taught you fundamental rights. So the first two organs are so inactive in all fronts. They generally do not bring reforms. Reforms they will bring when, let's say that they have not taken any step to address criminalization of politics. They have not taken any step to address free and fair election. ये तो इलेक्शन कमिश्नर TN सेशन का जो रोल था, देन उन्होंने एक होता है कि फोर्स मीन्स की लड़ाई लड़के लड़ के गवर्नमेंट से. The election commissioners have fought against the government to bring free and fair elections and introduce electronic voting machine. VVPAT जब आया तो गवर्नमेंट फंड ही नहीं दे रही इलेक्शन कमीशन को. The election commission went to Supreme Court. This फंड नहीं है हमारे पास. So this is what we will find the situation. The situations become so like that be it any, let's say, prison related, torture related, encounter related, human rights violation related, election related, defection related, how many things will count? Already we have told president's rule, ordinance and many other things. And you cannot say that you are acting in a legal manner. So this is how these things have forced. And then let's say other factors are also there. Other factors कि our constitution is highly liberal, society is transitional. Friction हो गए. Now they will have to uphold a liberal constitution. When they have to uphold a liberal constitution, so they will have to become proactive. Right? They have to take a stand. This plus meanwhile नए सारे issues आने लगे society में. नए issues, new developments, etc. New issues, let's say कि ICT has come, Aadhaar has come. Aadhaar has come, so it is affecting rights of people. Privacy of people. The new things are coming. Then similarly internet ban. The internet ban pe bhi Supreme Court has given its judgment. Like you cannot ban the internet for, let's say, indefinite time. When you have every time ban internet, that time itself you have to also give details to the people that when you will revive it. So we may not talk each and every judgment at one place. But that is how we'll find that this is how it is said that judicial activism is imposed on judiciary. Now, the question is the loss or the negatives due to judicial overreach and the benefits due to judicial activism. This. So, the loss is very, let's say, marginal. इतने सारे जजमेंट है तो एक दो गलत भी हो सकता है. दे आर ऑल्सो ह्यूमन. बट अगर जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म नहीं होगा तो यू नो व्हाट विल हैपन. दैट इज हाउ वी हैव टू सी दिस. दैट इज हाउ इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू सी व्हाई देयर इज जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म. So when they criticize, like when government is saying, yesterday we were saying, when government say, minister says, leave it to us for appointment. Yes, we can leave it to you for appointment. ऐसा ही था पहले. आप ही ने politicization शुरू किया. तो सारा appointment you have politicized. Can it be left to you? Why we need a selection committee? Right? Why we need a selection committee? The selection committee is transparency. तो आप अपने से क्यों नहीं लाते selection committee? किसी अपॉइंटमेंट के लिए सिलेक्शन कमेटी है, किसी इंस्टीट्यूशन के लिए सिलेक्शन कमेटी नहीं है. किसी का टेन्योर 6 ईयर है, किसी का आपने घटा के 3 इयर्स कर दिया, और किसी का चाहते हो कि डायनेमिक हो. राइट, जिसको मैं बोलता हूँ रेलवे का टिकटिंग है या एयरलाइंस का टिकटिंग है क्या, कि डायनेमिक होना चाहिए. नो, फेयर डायनेमिक होता है, टेन्योर थोड़ा डायनेमिक होता है. एनफोर्समेंट डायरेक्टरेट, तो दे आर सेइंग कि 2 इयर्स प्लस 3 इयर्स, और बाकी का टेन्योर कम कर रहे हैं. और अगर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज नहीं होते, इलेक्शन कमीशन और ये, तो उसका भी टेन्योर 3 इयर्स हो गया होता. This you should understand. Arbitrariness. So these developments result into lack of faith in executive and legislature. People have less faith in legislature and executive. People have more faith in judiciary. And judiciary कोई अपना empire run नहीं कर रही है. Sorry, this you should know that. If you criticize them, it's not that they are running their empire. It's not that they have they want to go in politics. It is not that they have some ulterior motive. Whatever the judgments they are giving for the sake of people. And when they give those judgments, there is also cost on their life. Yes. So they will not get post-retirement benefits. So this we have to understand. They do not have any ulterior motive.